Welcome back to the Girls in Marketing podcast. This week, we're diving into some huge news that could shake up how we market on social. The FTC is challenging Meta's ownership of Instagram and WhatsApp. If the platform split, marketers could be facing a future without cross-platform and targeting. Yeah, it is quite a big deal. We're also talking about Instagram's latest experiment, Lockable posts. Think secret codes, exclusivity, and new ways to drive superfans absolutely wild. It might just change the way that we think about engagement. Then there's Canva. They've just announced a ton of new features at their Canva Create event, from magic chart to this really cool photo editor upgrade, and even Canva Sheets. Yeah, I know sheets aren't very aesthetic, but they are going to be. We're rounding it all up with some fresh data on how Gen Z are planning their travel. It's all about influencers and social search, plus a look at L'Oreal's powerful new campaign for Anti-Street Harassment Week. Let's get into it. I wanted to just get started with today's episode and talk about the fact that Canva, well, we love Canva enough already. We are massive advocates, but they did an event called Canva Create, which we attended virtually, but it was in LA, which, can I just say, looked insane. Yeah. I definitely want to go at some point. Yeah. I love LA enough already, but it looked insane. Essentially, they released a whole load of new features. So just thought it was worth kind of talking about it, because I know so much of our community absolutely love Canva. And at the end of the day, Canva is the GOAT right now in terms of content creation, in terms of everything. So the first feature that I wanted to mention, which I think particularly is going to be really great for marketers, is their new Canva magic charts. So it's part of kind of like Canva Sheets, which is essentially helping you collect data in like a more visual way. So visual dashboards and stuff. I talk to people in our community all the time who are like, I don't know how to display my data, or where can I display data? And it is like quite a massive pain point for marketers, especially if you don't have massive budgets for tools that are maybe really expensive. So essentially, Magic Charts is going to allow people to eventually kind of connect up marketing tools, so things like Google Analytics, and then pull into a dashboard. So I just think that is going to be insane.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that, like we've said before, Canva's an amazing tool. It's got so many great features. It's got even more kind of AI features that they've introduced, photo editing and stuff like that, which I do think, one thing that we always talk about is how it's a really great assistant for you. And I think these AI design features are an incredible design assistant for you. I don't think that they replace For me, they don't replace designers. They don't replace that sort of thing. They don't replace your creativity, or they certainly shouldn't.
Yeah.
But they're an amazing kind of, helping tool. And I think particularly for so many people in our community that we speak to who are singular marketers, one person marketing teams, or they're in a really small marketing team on a really tight budget, not a lot of resource, wearing a lot of different hats, have a lot of responsibilities. It's something that's spoken about a lot. And, where we don't necessarily agree with how that should be the case. The reality is that some businesses, whether they're maybe in the early stages of kind of their growth or whatever it might be, and the marketing function isn't necessarily maybe as big as they would like, or as they could benefit from. And I do think that marketers who are in that position, for them, tools like Canva and all of the amazing features that they roll out are so beneficial for people who are having to kind of, do quite a variety of roles, whether it's creating content for social, whether it's, like you say, pulling, data and charts and reports together from different things, whether it's creating presentations and slide decks, whether it's whatever it might be, it gives them that opportunity to do it in the one place, and just kind of continually makes those improvements, the features. So I think that some of the new stuff that's coming out is really good, and I know that our community are going to really benefit and love it.
Something I'm really excited for as well, actually, is you're going to be able to put in different file formats into one document.
Okay.
Now, I have wanted this feature for so long. I was even thinking about it yesterday. So the features aren't out just yet. So they are coming soon. If people want to find out more, they can go to the What's New page, or you can also watch the recap of Canva Create as well. But essentially you'll be able to put different file formats into one document, which I love, because you could put like a piece of social content, and then you could put, you know, maybe like a slide deck, like a proposal or something, all in one place, which I think that was definitely something missing for me whenever I was creating things in Canva. I was always like, I've got to create all these different projects, when actually it'd be so much easier if it was all in one place. So that's
exactly. If you know that maybe you've got the one campaign that needs a variety of different assets for different channels, you can kind of keep them all in the same place and keep it a little bit more uniform. That's really good. I definitely think that's going to be a game changer as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely look out for that if you are a Canva user or wanting to be a Canva user, for sure.
I also wanted to mention about the stuff with Meta happening at the moment. So the FTC is challenging Meta over the acquisition of Instagram and WhatsApp. So we'll all know by now that Meta, the kind of group, own Instagram and WhatsApp. But what's happened is, obviously at the time, everyone was like, this is such a great thing to happen because they're basically, Meta are acquiring competitors. This is amazing for them. You know, they were named like killer acquisitions. But actually the reality now is that they're saying that essentially the judges are kind of deciding and figuring out in terms of rulings, in terms of like they're not sure. There's a bit of a disconnect in terms of the platforms themselves. In terms of what this means for marketers, it means that potentially there's not going to be a unified ad platform. So at the moment, you would log in and you would see Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp all together in terms of ad creation. But actually it's going to mean that this isn't unified anymore.
Yeah. So then obviously marketers will need to think about if this is the case and there's no unified kind of ad platform, how do they approach their targeting strategies in terms of across those platforms, and in terms of kind of the data and the optimization features of having that unified ad platform. What does that look like now? That's obviously going to be decentralized. So again, just I think something to be aware of if you are a marketer that does kind of dabble in, or your main role is in paid ads, then it's something I think to keep an eye out for, and kind of what happens with that, definitely. And another update, which I think is a really interesting and a fun one actually from Instagram this time, because I feel like sometimes you see updates from Instagram and you're just like, oh, is this necessary? But they are, I think, rolling out or trialing lockable posts.
Okay.
So where your followers have to kind of find a code to access content. And as far as I can see from what I've seen so far, I think it's going to be a bit of a case of like brands can choose to kind of share that code however they see fit. I don't know what that looks like. But yeah, like people have to, whether it's like super fans who want early access to content or something like that, have to kind of go away and find the code to unlock the content on your Instagram. So it has that kind of like exclusive, you know, really kind of hot trending like announcement kind of feel to it. So I think that's an interesting one that they're trialing. I think again to try and, you know, encourage, you know, people to stay on the platform, to be looking and refreshing for the next, like always trying to kind of, I don't know, keep on top of keeping people's interest, because as we know, users, consumers are increasingly, I think, you know, looking for new ways to stay engaged on the platform. And I think it's a fun one for brands. I don't really know how brands will use it. I guess I can kind of at the moment envisage it being like, you know, for maybe new product launches, new drops, maybe new pop-up events, like exclusive discounts, whatever it might be. I don't know. And I think I can definitely see creators using it as well. I'm sure it's something that, you know, if it rolls out and it works, it'll take off. I don't know how long-lived it'll be, whether it'll be like a short-lived kind of stunt by Instagram that people really like the idea of, and then kind of people's interest just sort of fades. I don't know, but I think it's definitely an interesting one, and hopefully will create a bit of fun on the app.
It definitely leads into the whole gamification sort of thing that we're seeing a lot now, brands leaning into how can we gamify what we have, like our products, our services. And I think this is something that Instagram is really trying to do. I think I really like the way Instagram is trying to be innovative. I think they have seen different platforms come up, for, like TikTok and other new platforms that exist, and they really want to stay on top as much as possible in terms of they want to be the forefront of people's minds. They want to have something, they want to have an edge, a bit of a difference. And I know we've kind of talked about Instagram in the past and said, they almost kind of have followed something like TikTok, or they follow the trends. But I do think, give them their due, they do definitely try to innovate as much as they can, and they're always trialing new things. I mean, sometimes there's updates that we don't even cover on the podcast because they come and go that quickly in terms of Instagram, that there's no point, because by the time we talk about it, it's irrelevant again. So I definitely think that it is really nice to see platforms innovating and just seeing what they can to engage people, because at the end of the day, that's what they want. They want engaged people on their apps, on social platforms. So I definitely think it's interesting to see Instagram just innovating, really.
Yeah, definitely.
So in terms of industry research, I wanted to mention one about essentially Gen Z trends and things that are happening in kind of social at the moment. Now, I think we've mentioned on the podcast before about how social media has had a massive impact on just us in general in terms of how we like social search and stuff like that. I used ChatGPT and TikTok to plan so many of my trips. I used it to plan itineraries, to find places to eat, to find hotels, all stuff like that. Now, recent research by Data Axle has found, and it was fielded in March 2025, it's found that 2/3 of Gen Z travelers use social media for inspiration, which is a huge percentage. And 52% of consumers overall would consider placing a visit to something that's featured in a TV or movie. So actually more percentage of people are using social media than they are using TVs and movies. 66% of Gen Z travelers use social media for travel inspiration, and obviously that's 52% would use TV. 41% of consumers overall use social media to research or discover destinations, so I'm definitely part of that 41%. And 39% of respondents indicated that travel influencers have some sway over destination choices.
Yeah.
Which, again, interesting.
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily surprises me, because I do think that like influencers in general, we know, are having more of an impact on consumers, like shopping choices and that sort of thing. And I think that the thing about travel influencers as well is that you generally will see them in those places. You build kind of an affinity, I think, kind of with them. You build that like trust in them, and you see them going to all these different places. And I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? It's trust, and you see them in those places recommending things that they've done, and you really get a feel for like, I can see myself there. So I think that's interesting. I think what you said about planning your trips with AI, an interesting statistic from the same research is that actually only 9% of respondents overall said that they use AI tools such as ChatGPT for planning their travel, but that actually jumped up to 15% in like kind of millennial category. Are you a millennial? You're not, are you? You Gen Z?
What?
Zillennial in the middle?
I think I'm like in the middle, but because I do identify with some of the stuff around like millennial, but then also sometimes with Gen Z as well.
A bit of like a zillennial in the middle sort of vibe.
I wouldn't say I identify as, I don't know what I officially am. I'm not sure what the age brackets are.
I know I'm a millennial, but I think you might possibly fall kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I'm more in the middle, because genuinely there are some things, and millennials will say something to me and I'm like, oh yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But then Gen Z will say it and I'm like, oh yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
And then there'll be things I don't understand about either.
Yeah.
Like the whole skibbity toilet stuff that's happening on like TikTok. I don't
even know what that means. I don't even know what you've just said.
But my younger siblings like talk about it all the time, and they're like Gen Z, and I'm like, I don't understand a word that you're saying.
I'm not gonna lie, I think I'm glad that I don't understand skibbity whatever you just said. So like, I'm quite happy to be a millennial right now. The day that I understand skibbity toilet, like it's not for me.
But yeah, I would say I'm in the middle, to be honest. Cool. But I think I'm really trying to lean into more kind of social search stuff, really.
Yeah.
And not really because I'm consciously thinking about it, just because I think it's a really interesting one. I mean, I even found myself the other day, so I'm going away soon, and I was thinking, oh, we need to like have a bit of an itinerary. And I was thinking, oh, I want to go this place and this place. And so I started kind of making some notes, and then I was thinking, oh, I really want to try some like new food places, because I'm going to America, and I feel like we always choose the same food places when we go to like America. It's always like the big chains or, stuff like that. And I think for me, I would always in the past Google something like that, like, top best restaurants to go to in this place. But I feel like sometimes Google isn't understanding my search intent in terms of like my age, my demographic, my who I am as a person. Whereas something like TikTok or even Instagram, they understand you. Like the algorithms understand who you are, what you want. So when you're searching, it's not just a generic search term like what you would typically get, you know, a few years ago with Google. So I am definitely leaning more into that. And it's just interesting to see that research is backing that up, really. It doesn't surprise me at all.
No.
But it is interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I think that, you know, everyone kind of uses it for their own search purposes. Like at the moment, for me, like I'm very much on like house content and stuff like that. And I would, you know, I'm really interested in like, I mean, I am not the best DIY person at all, but I love like a DIY hack, you know, like making something look, you know, better, more expensive than it is on like a budget and all that. Love all of that. Like trying to put my hand to those sorts of things, but I would much rather search that on the likes of TikTok, watch someone's video talking through how they did it, showing their start to finish, than like reading a blog post on how someone did it with like, and that's how obviously previously I would have kind of engaged with that sort of thing and followed like a step by step. But I also think it depends on how you prefer to consume content. I'm quite a visual person. I like to watch video. I like to kind of watch people, whether it's like clothes, showing them on or whatever it is. So I do think that we're going to see more and more of it becoming like a search tool. And yeah, for things like travel, it's definitely, you know, if you're a brand or you work for a brand, you can lean into that sort of thing. Whether you are like literally like a travel brand or you're like a restaurant or you're a whatever it is, that can kind of lean into that trend for people, like you say, you know, planning trips and how can you make sure that your brand's in the right place to be discovered for that sort of thing. Definitely one to think about. And, you know, if you're not already, definitely, you know, worth kind of bringing up as part of your social strategy for sure. So the next part of the podcast is usually when we will have a voice note from a marketing guest who will give us their answer to a kind of burning question from the community. This week we're doing something a little bit different. So I'm actually going to play a little bit of a game with Olivia. So, you know, if you're listening, you can also play because you don't know the answers either and you can see if you get them right. So this is a bit of a game of guess the brand by their mission statement. Thought it was just an interesting one. We talk a lot about branding. We talk a lot about kind of, you know, how brands can solidify themselves and be really well known from, you know, not just from like a logo and a colour, but just from kind of their mission and who they are and kind of how that filters into everything. So I'm going to read you some mission statements that I found online from brands and see if you can guess who the brand is based off of that. So the first one is, with every cup, with every conversation, with every community, we nurture the limitless possibilities of human connection.
Do I get any clues?
The clue is the mission statement.
With every cup. Okay.
Yeah. So I feel like that's the biggest clue.
Yeah. So I feel like it's most likely going to be like a coffee brand I would go for. With every cup. Can you repeat
With every
that?
cup, with every conversation, with every community, we nurture the limitless possibilities of human connection.
Every cup. Maybe it's not a coffee brand then. I don't know why my brain went to coffee. With every cup and conversation. So maybe like a coffee shop, potentially. Maybe.
Because they're focusing on like cup, but then also conversation and community. And like, I feel like maybe think of a brand that, you know, have lent into like that sort of thing in like previous campaigns and stuff.
Yeah.
Who comes to mind?
I don't know. There's quite a few actually, because there's quite a few brands that, is it like a big brand?
Yeah.
Quite a few brands that I think would lean into that sort of thing, like community and stuff like that. I want to go with either like a Costa or like a Starbucks or like a Cafe Nero. I'm looking at your face.
Lock one in.
Oh, see, I feel like it's one of those big coffee chains because all of those coffee chains do talk a lot about like community. They talk a lot about like obviously drinking from a coffee cup. You know what? I think I would like to go with, if I can lock it in.
Lock it in.
Oh, I don't know now. I'm unsure. Oh, it may be Pret. Conversation. Okay, I'm just going to lock in Costa.
Final answer?
Yeah.
Starbucks.
Oh,
but you were super close.
That was my second option.
Yeah, you were super close. And yeah, I think for me, when I was reading it, it kind of brought back into my mind previous campaigns that I'm seeing them do. And I know that they, you know, obviously a lot of these chains, you definitely were right to go to those sorts of brands. A lot of them have, you know, a really big focus on like customer like retention, loyalty, community, building points,
Yeah.
like sharing stuff through the app and being part of kind of something like a loyalty program and stuff like that. But I've definitely seen campaigns by Starbucks before that are around kind of like that, community, like sharing a Starbucks type of vibe. So yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. We absolutely love recording the podcast, but it's great to know what you think of the episodes too. Come and join our broadcast channel on Instagram to get involved in the chat. Let us know what you think of the episodes and what you want to hear more of.
Okay, next one. Our mission is to entertain, inform, and inspire people around the globe through the power of unparalleled storytelling, reflecting the iconic brands, creative minds, and innovative technologies that make ours the world's premier entertainment company.
I feel like I don't understand the words of that. Entertain
Mm-hmm.
would give me some sort of like a production company, so like Universal or Disney or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that isn't necessarily the vibe. Well, maybe more leaning into like a company in I'm not sure, Entertain.
Entertain, inform, inspire. I feel like unparalleled storytelling.
Yeah.
Like that gives me the essence of this brand. Like
Okay.
something that you think of that's like,
Storytelling.
yeah, world's
Am I-
premier entertainment company. I feel like you're massively on the right vibe already.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, am I on the
Yes,
right
like
lines?
definitely.
So
Your brain went to the right place.
Okay, so storytelling, mine would go to like a production company. That's where I'm getting the kind of inspire from, inspire, inform, and then I'm not quite sure about the unparalleled storytelling because I think that there are quite a lot of companies that do it quite well. Unless we go for like a Paramount sort of, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll just go with like, is there a documentary? I'll go with Universal, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
What
locking
is
it
it?
in.
Yeah, I'm gone.
It's Disney. So,
Oh,
yeah,
no.
like super close. I think for me, yeah, the storytelling and like the world's premier entertainment company, I think gives me sort of that vibe. But like, obviously goes to show they're definitely on the right page.
Yeah.
I can't actually remember where I got this mission statement from. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think it was on their website, but I don't know if it was like, because obviously Disney's huge and they've got like a lot of different avenues to their brands. So I think this was just kind of them in general as a company. But yeah, no, obviously on the right lines. Okay. Next one. Our mission, they used their brand name, but I'm not going to use it. Our mission then and today is to offer women across the world a universe of high quality, hand finished, modern and genuine jewellery products at affordable prices, thereby inspiring women to express their individuality. All women have their individual stories to tell, a personal collection of special moments that makes them who they are. This is why we celebrate these moments. This is why we say these moments are unforgettable.
Is it Cartier?
No.
I know it's a jewellery brand.
Mm-hmm.
Tiffany?
No.
Tiffany's, that could have been a good one.
I feel like my main thing with this one was like...
But you know it.
Yeah, true. I'm just helping out. They all have their individual stories to tell, a personal collection of special moments. What jewellery brand do you think brings out like moments?
See, I thought that about Tiffany. That's why I went, like Cartier and Tiffany both give me that vibe. It's like bringing out that sort of thing.
If you were to think of, if you were to think of like you were celebrating a woman in your life for like a particular moment, from wedding to baby shower to birthday to whatever, like what brand would you go to that probably would cater for something?
From jewellery perspective?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Like, well, it depends.
You can
on
add
the
like
price point.
you can add a personal touch for like very different.
Okay, I know now. Pandora.
Yeah, that was the thing.
You can add
a personal touch, like the personal, like a charm for every event. Like, and I think to be fair, like now that you know it, I do think that kind of comes out, doesn't it?
It
like
does.
the individual stories, the personal collection, special moments, that sort of thing. I think that does quite describe what they do and kind of what they're trying to get across as a brand, is that kind of like really personal feel that there's something for every. Anyway,
no, I really
like
that. I did need the clue though, to be honest, because I was also thinking I don't know of many more like chain jewelry brands that are actually very similar to Pandora. I think fair play to them because they've done quite well.
Yeah.
because there's not really any brands. I know a lot of individual jewelry brands or like indie jewelry brands, but there's not many that are more mainstream. So yeah, I love that. I think that's a great one.
I agree. We believe that ice cream can change the world. We have a progressive, non-partisan social mission that seeks to meet human needs and eliminate injustices in our local, national, and international communities by integrating these concerns in our day-to-day business activities.
Okay.
I feel like you're going to know this one.
I know this one. And I think that is because the brand and the mission, hopefully I get this right now, the brand and the mission are so closely aligned that whenever you see anything that they do, you know it's them. So is it Ben & Jerry's?
It's Ben & Jerry's, yeah. Okay. And I feel like I agree. I feel like out of all of these, this is the one where you kind of feel like you know that that's what Ben & Jerry's are about from like wherever you see them. Yeah. And I think that's a sign of obviously like, you know, their brand is their brand through and through, throughout. So yeah, good one. Okay, final one. This one I actually pulled from this brand and they have 5 different short mission statements and they've actually specified who they're for. Okay. So for our consumers, by creating joyful moments through our delicious and nourishing products and unique brand experiences. For our customers, by being the best possible partner, driving game-changing innovation and delivering a level of growth unmatched in our industry. For our associates and our communities, by creating meaningful opportunities to work, gain new skills, and build successful careers and maintaining a diverse and inclusive workplace. For our planet, by conserving nature's precious resources and fostering a more sustainable planet for our children and grandchildren. For our shareholders, by delivering sustainable top-tier total shareholder return and embracing best-in-class corporate governance. I'll be honest, I mean, I'm not like slating this brand at all. I don't know that I would get who they are. I mean, granted, I'm not their stakeholder. I'm not their associate. I'm not the planet. Like, do you know what I mean? But I feel like nothing about necessarily what they say gives me like, this is like, I know this brand.
Yeah.
I think this is the trickiest one.
Yeah, so do I. You know, I wouldn't say out of any of those things I really understand. I think also because it's quite generic.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I feel like, so maybe if you focus on the consumers one, by creating joyful moments through our delicious and nourishing products and unique brand experiences, I would say, so I'll give you a clue. I would say that this brand in the space that they're in, they're a very big brand, but they are still, I would say, a challenger brand. Okay. And I don't necessarily think that this really fully kind of gets across what they do.
What's getting me is nourishing. Then it's got to be like more of a healthier brand.
You would think.
Okay, well, I would assume.
You would think. That's what also threw me because I was like, I don't know, but that is what I would call this brand's products.
This brand.
At all.
Okay. And they're quite a big brand, but they're challenger brand.
Very big brand, but I would still say they're a challenger brand, yeah.
What was their customers one?
So customers was by being the best possible partner, driving game-changing innovation and delivering a level of growth unmatched in our industry.
Is it?
So customers, obviously, and consumers in this context, I guess, I feel like is a bit more like B2C, B2B vibe.
Yeah. I don't know, you know. I don't know if I'm going to know this one.
Okay, I'll give you a clue. They're in the beverage space.
Okay. I still don't. And they're a challenger brand. Is it like Pepsi?
It's Pepsi. But like that doesn't give you Pepsi.
No, it doesn't. And you know what?
Like delicious, okay. The nourishing, not really. Like don't.
I do love a Pepsi Max, but
would you be like, I need some nourishment? Like I am ill. Like my bones are withering. I need something to fill me with health and wealth. I'm gonna have a Pepsi Max.
You know what?
You have a Pepsi Max. Yeah. Fair. Okay. Well done, Pepsi. You got live.
No, being honest, water. That should not be like water's mission statement.
Yeah, water's mission statement. Yeah, like bring us life. I don't know though. I just thought that was an interesting one because when I was reading it, I feel like a lot of the others gave me. I was reading it and I was like, yes, I can see this. That gives me the brand. And then the Pepsi one, I was a bit like, I mean, you know, Pepsi's massive. You know, they've got to kind of cater their mission statements to cover everything that they do, but they literally do have 5 of them. And I wouldn't have said that any of them. I was particularly like, yes, that is Pepsi.
I think the nourishing did throw me off. Like, I am joking about the whole, well, I am, but I'm not.
Like you would reach for a Pepsi Max, but you wouldn't be doing it thinking this is nourishing my body. No,
and I also think the Pepsi Max girlies will understand.
Yeah, and I agree. And I would say maybe something more like comforting even maybe because it's a bit of like I think a lot of people would reach for it as like a, you know, one of those like what's the word, like emotional support Pepsi Max type of thing.
Yeah.
Like it's a comforting drink, but I wouldn't say it's nourishing. I don't know if that's the right word. Anyway, I'm not critiquing Pepsi's brand. Like you do you're doing well.
It's interesting.
It's fine. It's working.
Yeah, I think you're okay. I would say the only reason I got that is because you said beverage and challenger brand, and Pepsi are the first that come to me really. If you say beverage and challenger brand, but I wouldn't have got it just off the back of those mission statements, to be honest.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
So anyway, interesting one. Would love to know whether other people got those as well.
I wasn't very good at them. A few of the last ones I was better at, but the first few I was very confident.
You get into the swing of it, don't you? But would love to know how everyone else got on, and just thought that was a bit of fun to do.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to talking about a few staff picks. So some things that have been happening in the space, our thoughts on them, what's been going off. First one, AI doll trend. I feel like we can't not touch on this. It's kind of been going on for a little while now, kind of starting to fade, I think, and everyone's jumping on it. But just an interesting one I thought to bring up. I was inundated with them on my LinkedIn feed and Instagram, to be fair, for probably like a good few days straight, where everybody was creating their AI dolls. I've also seen a lot of different responses to the trend, and I think it's an interesting one to look at both sides of. As with all kind of use of AI, there are two sides of it, and I am very much, wanting to be aware of and educate myself on, all of the different sides of AI, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I think that it's all, amazing and roses and, it's all completely ethical and great and stuff like that. But I do think that, it's important to have those conversations. So, a lot of people did create them, and there was some conversation around, people saying that it's, I think, kind of stealing in a way from, certain creators, like design styles and stuff like that, or just sort of saying, like it's I guess stifling creativity by everyone kind of jumping on the same trends and stuff like that. But then on the other hand, it's a fun and a nice way for people to kind of create things that, like, again, I don't know, I guess kind of represent themselves, show their interest, get involved with things. It created a lot of conversation and that sort of thing. So I always find these trends interesting because there's always two sides to them, isn't there? I'd love to know what you kind of thought.
Yeah, I really like it. I think that there is definitely a conversation in terms of creativity and AI and designers, and a lot of conversation around IP and stuff like that. But I don't think that this trend really leans into that, because at the end of the day, it is a bit of fun. It's a doll with, a kind of image of you as a doll with your favorite things or things that, relate to you. And that's not necessarily taking work away from designers or creatives, because there's no way that I would have paid someone to create that of me necessarily. It's just a fun sort of take. But I understand the angle of it's taking creative ideas that have come from something, because also what we need to remember is obviously AI is learnt from things that are being inputted into it. So at some point in some universe, there will have been these sorts of things inputted into it, and where they've come from and who they belong to. And then obviously now with prompts and creating your own, who actually owns that, what is the implications of that, and who are the designers behind it. And even to be completely honest, I didn't even know where this trend come from. And when we were setting up this episode, we were like, right, let's try and find out who started it, where it comes from, where it originates. Now, I did find an article talking about the how it originated in terms of yourself in a toy box. So there are artists and designers who have done that before. But I was more interested in, where did it come from an AI perspective? Like, who started it in terms of who created the prompt and who, made it go viral? And genuinely, I couldn't find it, because there's so many posts about it that nobody really knows. They've just seen it and jumped on the trend. And I think it's fun. And it's something that is now gone quite mainstream. So at first, I think we seen it blow up a lot more within like LinkedIn and like the professional space. But then I've now seen a lot of brands jumping onto it. So I've seen a few brands recently that would do a carousel of people in the business and do the AI doll trend for everyone in the business, smaller businesses and stuff. And I've now seen a lot of brands jumping onto it, like showing their founder or showing their mascot. And I do think it is a bit of fun, but I think there is a wider conversation to be had around essentially like what this means for us for creativity,
Yeah.
for everything.
Definitely. And I think, it's nothing new that these sorts of trends come about. It was only a few years ago when there was, if you remember, like the Little Miss and Little Mister trend, where it was like everyone was being like, I'm Little Miss happy. And then someone else in the office is Little Miss like always late or whatever it was. And a lot of brands and professionals jumped on creating their own. And again, a bit of fun wasn't necessarily, I don't think at the time, like an AI generated sort of thing. Like people were creating their own designs, like, in like design platforms or whatever, and like putting their own kind of fun little spin on it. So there's nothing new in that sense. I think for me, the other thing that I'm still not really sure on with this sort of stuff is that like I totally see the fun in it. And I think it's harmless in that, like, people, I don't think anyone's going into it with any sort of malicious intent. My thing as well is the more that AI is becoming kind of an ever-present kind of tool in society nowadays, is that I think that AI, we've got to approach it with caution in terms of what we use it for, in that, it's not this search engine that just kind of spits stuff out at no cost to anyone or the environment. I think using AI strategically for like, well thought out and kind of, purpose-led reasons is great. But I kind of worry that we're going to go down a path of, everyone using AI for every little thing, or, for stuff that like, is nice, but not like necessarily, crucial. And it actually, AI to generate these systems to create all of these things that AI spits out, like it uses like a lot of water, like it has implications for the environment. Like it's not just a tool that kind of sits in the abyss and just is a nice little thing, someone tapping away on a keyboard, and doesn't have any implications. So I think there is definitely a wider conversation. I think that's why there has been so much, conversation around it, as with anything. And I think as we're going to continue to see with AI. So I just think as marketers, we just have that kind of responsibility to do our own like research and just decide how we feel about things. And that's not to say that you should or shouldn't do any one thing, but I just think, going into do it, using AI in any form, just like have a little look into like what, why and what and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I would also say as well, check things like IP, because we had a series recently, I think I spoke about it on a podcast ago or so,
yes,
with Emma Wharton, who we did a membership webinar series with. It was really great. It was helping to educate basically people in our membership community around AI, because there is a massive thing at the moment with everyone talking about it, and I think a lot of marketers just aren't really sure about
there's
what's
not a great
going
deal
on.
of understanding.
Exactly. So what I would say is, if you are generating things in AI, anything, whether it's this AI doll trend or anything like that, understanding the IP of that, like who actually owns that piece of content. Do you own it or do you not? And the only way you can find that out is through things like privacy policies, terms and conditions. So wherever you're generating your AI images, whatever it's on, understanding what that individual platform has in terms of privacy policies and terms and conditions, because then you're going to find out, okay, well, we own this or we don't own this, or, all stuff like that. Because I do think that there is a big kind of question mark against IP at the moment with a lot of AI stuff, especially when it comes to imagery.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to talk about another campaign, which was really great. So in terms of like, I would say celebrating, but that's quite of not really the best word for it. Essentially, for International Anti-Street Harassment Week, L'Oreal unveiled its new kind of hero movie, along with some assets as well, which is called Never Your Fault. So this essentially is a campaign where there's a few different elements to it. So there's the kind of short movie, which talks a lot about street harassment and stuff like that. They also have some assets that they've created which talk about don't blame your dress, don't blame your lipstick, and it's kind of like all red, all branded, and it's all about street harassment. What they're doing is, which we both chatted about before the podcast, which we really like, is L'Oreal are a brand that traditionally have done a lot and have very much focused and aligned their own missions. Even though they're a product-based brand, they have the wider mission and vision around women, around girls, around that sort of thing that they want to align their campaigns with. And I think this campaign does it really well. So as well as kind of obviously talking about like, don't blame your lipstick, don't blame your dress, that sort of thing, they have created a whole kind of portal where you can get trained on street harassment. So essentially on the landing page for the campaign, which is called Never Your Fault, you can scroll down to the bottom and it says get trained in 10 minutes. And then you can then go onto a page which tells you, has a few different videos on if you've witnessed street harassment or if you've experienced street harassment, basically just kind of what to do, what the go-to things to do are. So I really like this campaign. It's not the first one that L'Oreal have done. They've done lots of different things. They did a street harassment campaign in 2020, which was in partnership with Right to Be as well. And all of this is off the back of research and things that they've found in terms of different surveys that have been conducted, and essentially they just want to bring as much awareness to things like street harassment and stuff like that as much as possible, because they're real pressing issues that affect everyday women, really.
Yeah, and I think it's great. And like you said, I think that, when brands can do that, they obviously have a really great understanding of their consumers. They have a lot of insight into, the issues that they face and their biggest concerns and that sort of thing. And so it's not just a case of this brand being like, okay, we sell these products, we'll stay in our lane, and all we're going to do is, kind of campaigns pushing our products, pushing beauty, pushing that sort of thing. It's actually flipping it on its head and saying, okay, we might sell lipsticks, we might sell makeup, etc. But we know that this is a really big issue that, a large proportion of our consumers actually face or tackle or, are concerned about. So let's kind of address it. And even though it's not necessarily a money making campaign or anything like that, it's so important that they're speaking to these wider issues and, doing that kind of important social insight led campaign to tackle issues like this. So yeah, interesting. I think we've seen quite a few other brands, like you say, kind of doing this sort of thing. And I always like to see those purpose led campaigns and how they're executed by brands. And I think this is a really interesting way of doing that by L'Oreal. So yeah, love that.
The final thing I wanted to mention just before we wrap up today's episode, essentially with the kind of podcast, a lot of the time we talk about like our favorites and things that we really loved. And I know that we spotlight, for example, L'Oreal, huge brand. There's lots of brands that we always spotlight. And something that you would naturally think that we would talk about would be things like Coachella campaigns, because obviously recently being Coachella, it's huge in America, but also it's becoming just part of Western culture. So many brands are doing these crazy, amazing activations, pop-ups and stuff like that. But I just wanted to take a minute in the podcast, instead of highlighting the Coachella campaigns or talking about how amazing certain campaigns were, to just remind people that the reality of marketing isn't Coachella campaigns. Don't get me wrong. You might be in a position where you work for a brand who maybe does a Coachella campaign, which is great. But I know the majority of people in our community, the majority of marketers, will never see budgets that even just go into a quarter of a Coachella campaign.
No.
And I posted a LinkedIn post last week that essentially just talked about how the fact that, it's great. Coachella campaigns are amazing, and hats off to the teams who do those. But actually, why aren't we celebrating the marketers who have no budget? They just have a Canva account, or they have just access to basically nothing, and they are just out here creating amazing campaigns on a really tight budget. So instead of kind of spending these few minutes discussing a Coachella campaign that we loved, we just kind of wanted to talk about that, because I think the reality for so many people is we can spotlight these huge, amazing brands. A lot of them, the time, they're really funky, cool, modern brands. But actually the majority of our marketing community are B2B girlies, or we're working in legal or construction, or just the industry.
It just doesn't necessarily feel as sexy. Like it's not a brand that you're going to take influencers to Coachella for, right? Like it's like a legal tax firm or something. You're not going to be taking, people for like a big pop-up activation at Coachella. And that can, I think, sometimes feel a little bit like, like I work in marketing, but I don't do that. But the reality is like the majority of people in marketing don't do that.
Exactly.
And yes, it looks amazing. It's incredible. And I'm sure it would be so fun to work for those brands. But like, yeah, what you are doing and, you know, with the budget that you have and the resource that you have is amazing. Like the behind the scenes, like email flows and automations that you're setting up and like the not so sexy SEO strategy that you're working on, or the whatever it is, it might not be a Coachella activation that's like a big, like in your face, amazing pop up, but like you're bringing results for the business that you work for in a way that is like still amazing. And, you know, I think like you say, we normally talk about them and they're great as like aspirational, inspirational campaigns. There's always something that you can take from them, I think.
Exactly.
But, you know, if you're a marketer that doesn't work for one of those companies, know that you are in the majority and that most of us don't. And we're looking at them like, oh, if only.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a great place to end on today. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Girls in Marketing podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you picked up some fresh insights and maybe even a little inspiration for your next big marketing move. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate us, and leave a review. It really helps us reach more amazing marketers like you. Don't forget to let us know what you thought of today's episode as well. Tag us on social media and follow us for the latest updates, behind the scenes, sneak peeks, and fun marketing chats. We'll be back soon with another installment of trends, updates, and campaigns that are shaping the marketing world right now. Until then, get involved in the conversation on social media and check out our Girls in Marketing membership to join a community of incredibly talented marketers just like you. See you next time.